The giant squid was long considered a legend until scientists finally caught one on camera 3,000 feet below the surface. A fish vanished for nearly a century only to be found alive and well in 2024. And one of the world's tiniest snakes reappeared under a rock after nearly 2 decades off the radar. These are animals that were declared extinct until someone caught them on camera. For the longest time, the giant squid was like a sea monster from folklore. Sailors would tell stories of encounters with them, but no one had ever captured photographic or video evidence. Marine biologist Richard Ellis even called it the, quote, most elusive image in natural history. And he wasn't wrong. In the 90s, there was a photo going around that claimed to show a diver next to a giant squid, but it turned out to be a different species. A big squid, sure, but not the squid. It wasn't until 2001 that we even got video of a baby giant squid. And then in 2002, someone in Japan found a full-grown one washed up on a beach, still alive, but barely. They tied it up by the docks and it died overnight. At least they got a picture. The real breakthrough came through in 2004. 2 Japanese scientists dropped a camera 3,000 feet into the ocean with some bait. After 20 tries in one day, bam, a massive squid latched on. It thrashed so hard it left a tentacle behind. They ended up with over 500 photos and finally proved the thing was not just real, but actively hunting. Then in 2012, we finally got the money shot. Clear video of a giant squid. It was missing its feeding tentacles, probably from a fight with a sperm whale. It came in slowly, drawn by fake jellyfish lights and some bait, and it let them film for about 23 minutes. This fish was considered extinct. It vanished from records since the early 20th century. The Chell snakehead fish. Scientists hadn't seen it since specimens collected between 1918 and 1933 along India's Chell River. Then in 2024, a team led by Dr. Praveen Raj Jayasaman finally caught and photographed 3 live specimens, confirming the Chell snakehead was still alive over 85 years after it went missing. It was so rare it became known as the world's most elusive snakehead. And the wildest part, locals in West Bengal had been catching and eating these fish the whole time without realizing they were eating something scientists thought was long extinct. As you can see, this tiny snake is shockingly small, just about 10 centimeters long, small enough to fit on a coin. It's called the Barbados thread snake, and after nearly 2 decades without a confirmed sighting, scientists were worried it had disappeared for good. But in March of 2025, land researcher Connor Blades and Justin Springer from Rewild decided to overturn hundreds of rocks in a little forest near a jack-in-the-box tree in Barbados. Blades said, after a year of searching, you begin to get a little pessimistic. But they pressed on, and finally they did find one. The snake was transported live to the lab, filmed wriggling in a petri dish under a microscope, and finally identified. As Justin Springer put it, rediscovering one of our endemics reminds us that we still have something important left that plays an important role in our ecosystem. So, just goes to show you that tiny species can go missing for years, even on an island that's been mapped and visited by humans for hundreds of years. Alright, let's talk about sturgeon. You might be thinking, a sturgeon? Really? That's just, a big fish. But the thing is, these fish are pretty much prehistoric monsters. Some species, like the beluga sturgeon, can grow over 20 feet long and weigh more than 3,000 pounds. That's too much, too many pounds. That's the size of a small boat, and their armored, bony bodies make them look like something that should have died out with the dinosaurs, but no, they're still swimming around in the depths of rivers and oceans, an animal that's barely changed in over 200 million years. People have mistaken them for sea serpents for centuries, and honestly, it's not hard to see why. There have been reports of massive, shadowy creatures surfacing in lakes and rivers, only for it to turn out to be an absolutely enormous sturgeon. And because some species live for over 100 years, you might just run into the same one your great-grandparents saw, which is pretty cool. Now we're gonna get a little outlandish, but hear me out. The plesiosaur. It's supposed to be extinct. That's what scientists say, but for over a century, people have been spotting long-necked, flippered creatures in waters all around the world. Loch Ness, Lake Champlain, the oceans off Japan. Even experienced sailors and fishermen have reported seeing something that looks an awful lot like a living plesiosaur. One of the most famous cases may be the 1977 Zuyo-Maru incident, where Japanese fishermen off the coast of New Zealand hauled up this bizarre rotting carcass that looked a lot like, well, a dead plesiosaur. Scientists quickly dismissed it as a decomposed basking shark, but some researchers just weren't buying this. The shape, the flippers, the long neck, it was all just a little too uncanny. If someone told you a sea serpent was caught on camera, your first thought would probably be like, maybe, I guess. But then you see the frilled shark and suddenly you're not so sure anymore. Like, I guess, yeah, sea serpents do exist. The thing is pure nightmare fuel. It's got an eel-like body, rows of needle-sharp teeth, and a mouth that looks way too big for its head. It's been around for 80 million years and has barely changed at all, which tends to be the case for some of Earth's ugliest, creepiest animals for whatever reason. The frilled shark usually stays deep underwater, but every now and then, one turns up near the surface. One was caught off the coast of Japan in 2007, and let's just say it didn't do anything to calm people's fears about what might be lurking in the abyss. Scientists say it's harmless to humans, but honestly, if you saw one of these things swimming toward you, would you really care? You'd have a mini heart attack regardless. Now, horseshoe crabs don't look that scary at first. They're just weird, alien-looking creatures that have been roaming the Earth for around 450 million years. But when you realize they've survived multiple mass extinctions, including the one that wiped out the dinosaurs, you start to wonder what kind of deal they made with the universe. Have horseshoe crabs been the key to life all along? Well, here's something really cool. Their BLOOD is blue, and I mean bright blue, and it has its uses other than keeping the crabs alive, obviously. It's used in the biomedical industry. They harvest it to test for bacterial contamination in vaccines. So yeah, not only did these things outlive the dinosaurs, they're also aiding in modern medicine. Scientists still don't fully understand how they've managed to stick around for so long. Whatever they're doing though, it's working because they barely changed in 500 million years. And finally, if there ever was a real-life sea monster, it's the giant squid. For centuries, sailors have spun tales about this massive tentacled beast dragging ships under the waves, but no one really believed them. Then in the early 2000s, scientists finally got proof giant squids were real, and they were just as terrifying as the legends made them out to be. These deep-sea giants can grow over 40 feet long, and their eyes, some of the biggest in the animal kingdom, are specifically adapted to see in the pitch-black depths of the ocean. They use their long, lightning-fast tentacles to snatch up their prey, and their beaks are so strong they tear apart just about anything they catch. And let's not forget about their arch nemesis, the sperm whale. Deep-sea battles between these two have been going on for who knows how long, and sometimes washed-up whale carcasses show up covered in these massive sucker marks, proof that these fights aren't just tales told by sailors. Even now, we barely know anything about giant squids. They just live so deep that almost everything we've learned has come from dead specimens or very rare footage. There could be Godzilla-sized ones deep down in the ocean. Who knows? Imagine reeling in a fish that was supposed to have been dead for 66 million years. Well, that's what happened in 1938 when a South African fisherman unknowingly pulled in a coelacanth, a prehistoric fish that scientists thought had gone extinct right alongside the dinosaurs. How insane would that have been? This living fossil has changed almost nothing in hundreds of millions of years. Unlike typical fish, the coelacanth has lobed fins with bone structures that almost look like primitive legs, and some researchers think they sorta kinda are, in that they may be this evolutionary bridge between sea creatures and the first land-walking vertebrates. Even weirder, they don't swim like normal fish. Instead, they sorta walk through the water, moving each fin in a coordinated way that kind of mimics four-legged animals. And oh yeah, they also glow. Their scales contain a type of bioluminescence that gives them an eerie, ghostly blue shimmer. Even now, coelacanths are incredibly elusive, found only in deep waters off of Africa and Indonesia. They also live pretty long, up to 100 years, maybe even more, and they give birth to live young after an absurdly long gestation period. Scientists estimate it takes up to 5 years for baby coelacanths to develop inside their mother, so they're really strange animals. If deep-sea creatures had horror movie, the lancetfish would be at the top of the list. These nightmarish predators have long, ribbon-like bodies, oversized dorsal fins that run nearly their entire length, and razor-sharp, needle-like teeth that jut out even when its mouth is closed. It's the kind of fish that looks like it shouldn't exist, and yet it does, lurking in the twilight zone of the ocean. One of the strangest things about the lancetfish is their diet, or lack of digestion to be more accurate. When scientists have studied their stomach contents, they've found whole, undigested prey inside, as if these fish have no real digestive system at all. It gives them an almost undead-like quality, as if they're constantly eating but never fully breaking down their food. Lancetfish are also hermaphrodites, meaning they have both male and female reproductive organs, which makes them even more unique. And here's another strange little fact. Even though the lancetfish live so deep down, they've been found washed up on beaches fully intact, leaving researchers wondering why they suddenly appear on land. Are they dying off because of some unknown environmental factor, or are they being forced to the surface by something even scarier lurking down in the deep? The discovery of the megamouth shark in 1976 was an accident, and one that left scientists amazed. This deep-sea giant, reaching up to 18 feet long, has one of the strangest appearances of any shark species. It's got this massive, gaping mouth that looks like it belongs to some extinct sea monster. Unlike most sharks, the megamouth doesn't hunt with speed or brute force. Instead, it swims slowly with its enormous mouth wide open, filtering tiny plankton and jellyfish from the water. It's a bizarre feeding method for a shark, more like a whale than a predator. What also makes the megamouth so terrifying is that we simply don't know a whole lot about it. This species was completely unknown to science until 1976, when one accidentally got caught in a US Navy ship's anchor line, and since then only a few dozen have ever been seen. That means a giant deep-sea shark was swimming around the world's oceans completely undetected for who knows how long, proving just how little we really know about what lurks deep down in the ocean. The chambered nautilus is basically a time capsule from 500 million years ago. Unlike most modern sea creatures, this relic has remained virtually unchanged since even before the age of the dinosaurs. It survived multiple mass extinctions and ice ages, making it one of the toughest survivors in the history of the planet. But what makes the Nautilus kinda eerie is its design. Its shell follows the Fibonacci sequence, and for those who are unfamiliar, the Fibonacci sequence is a mathematical pattern found in galaxies, hurricanes, and even in human DNA. Is this just an evolutionary coincidence, or is there something more mysterious going on? Some believe that this natural spiral represents a form of perfection, almost as if it were intentionally crafted by some unknown force. Now, unlike squids and octopuses, its distant relatives, the Nautilus lacks complex intelligence, but it makes up for it with one of the most efficient buoyancy control systems in the animal kingdom. It fills and empties its shell with gas to move up and down, allowing it to hover in this eerie, slow motion stillness. And how does it spot danger while living so deep down? Well, it has these large alien-like eyes that it uses to detect even the faintest movement in near total darkness. The goblin shark. This gorgeous deep-sea cutie has a grotesquely elongated snout, rubbery pinkish gray skin, and its most breathtaking feature, that inviting mouth. Just look at those jagged, needle-sharp gnashers and tell me that you wouldn't want to kiss. Those jaws launch forward, by the way, like a projectile to grab their prey. First discovered in the late 19th century, the goblin shark remained a mystery for decades, rarely surfacing from its deep-sea habitat. Then, as commercial deep-sea fishing started to expand, more of them started appearing and showing just how bizarre this creature really is. Its hunting method is really cool, aside from the alien xenomorph jaw snap thing. See, instead of chasing its prey, the goblin shark senses electrical signals in the water using specialized organs in its snout, which is nuts. And then when an unsuspecting fish or squid swims by, its entire jaw explodes forward, grabbing its prey before snapping back into place. It's basically a biological harpoon, and it works so fast that high-speed cameras are needed to capture the movement. The goblin shark is a living relic, a species so ancient that it dates back over 125 million years, and I bet a lot of the animals that have to deal with it wish that it would have just stayed there. This image was shared to X by the National Parks Board, who wrote, "The Neptune's cup sponge is the first animal described from Singapore. It was collected in Rafflesia's presence in 1819 and described by Thomas Hardwick, presumed to be extinct until its reappearance in the region. It was rediscovered here in 2011. So a bit more on this. Neptune's cup is a sea creature people thought was gone for good. By 1912 it was considered extinct because it had been overharvested. Then in 2011, divers off Thailand and Singapore found a handful of these things alive. Singapore moved some to a marine sanctuary to protect them, but the same sanctuary is full of fish like map puffers and copperband butterfly fish that love snacking on them. Not exactly ideal, but since 2017, more have been spotted off Cambodia. Unlike most sponges that attach to reefs, these guys just anchor themselves in the sand at the bottom of the ocean. Turns out they weren't extinct, they were just really good at hiding. Two fishermen off Gran Canaria got the surprise of their lives when they came face to face with one of the ocean's weirdest predators, a goblin shark. Now, the thing is, these sharks are found way deep below the surface, but this one turned up while Marcos Hernandez and Ramon Santana were fishing. When it came up, we had no idea what it was, Marcos said. At first we thought it was a swordfish because of the snout, but then we realized it wasn't. It had leathery skin, and after looking online, we understood what it really was." End quote. The shark even showed off its signature party trick, where its jaw juts out. After confirming it was a goblin shark, they released it back into the water. This is the first confirmed sighting of the species in these waters. Goblin sharks are often called living fossils because they've barely changed in over 100 million years. They're rarely seen alive, let alone at these depths. Big fin squid are insanely rare. So rare that most deep sea explorers will just go their whole careers without seeing one. Big fin squid were first caught on camera in September of 1988 off northern Brazil, nearly 4,735 meters down, which is over 15,000 feet. They've got these crazy long skinny arms and big fins that give them this totally alien look. They really do look like something from another planet, and yes, those are arms, not tentacles. Big fins have 4 normal arms and 2 specialized feeding tentacles, but arms stretch so ridiculously long, sometimes as long as their whole body, it's easy to mistake them for tentacles. In 1992, a submersible spotted 2 off the coast of West Africa, and in 2000, an ROV in the Gulf of Mexico filmed one estimated at 7 meters long. More recently, an NOAA submersible captured a big fin in November of 2021 off Florida at nearly 2,400 meters deep. Some of them probably live over 6,000 meters down, which is basically the bottom of the sea. Scientists still don't fully understand how they live down there, but each rare sighting gives them an incredible peek at one of the strangest, most mysterious creatures in the ocean. The smooth-toothed black-tipped shark was thought to be extinct over 100 years ago, until it was rediscovered in 2008 at a fish market in Kuwait. The first specimen was caught back in 1902 by a naturalist Wilhelm Hein in Yemen and sent to the Vienna Museum along with other animals and plants, and for decades this thing went mostly unnoticed. Then in 1985, scientist Jack Garrick examined that old specimen and he identified it as a new species. Since no other specimens had been seen, scientists assumed it might be extinct, and some even questioned whether it was a valid species at all. But then in 2008, during a research expedition, the smooth-toothed blacktip appeared at Kuwait's sharkfish market. These sharks are relatively small, growing up to 4 feet long with a greenish-colored body. They seem to prefer shallow waters and feed mainly on small, bony fish. Not much else is known about them, but the smooth-toothed blacktip is currently listed as vulnerable on the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List of Threatened Species. The Shoshone pupfish is a tiny fish that lives in the middle of the desert, in small springs and drainage areas around Shoshone Springs, California. Scientists thought it had gone extinct by 1969, but in 1986, it was rediscovered hiding in a drainage ditch that had been covered in thick cattails. The population was so small at the time that almost all the fish were collected and sent to universities for breeding programs, just to make sure the species didn't disappear completely. These fish are built to survive extreme conditions. They can handle water temperatures from freezing all the way up to 44 degrees Celsius or 111 degrees Fahrenheit. They grow up fast as well, reaching sexual maturity in just 4 to 6 weeks. The coelacanth is a fish that scientists thought had been gone for 66 million years, basically since the time of the dinosaurs. But then in 1938, a fisherman off South Africa hauled one up and brought it to Marjorie Courtney Latimer, a museum curator. She didn't totally know what she had at first, but after calling in scientist J.L.B. Smith, it was confirmed that this fish, known only from fossils, was actually still a living species, a species that became known as the quintessential living fossil. Coelacanths live in the deep sea, usually between 150 and 700 meters down, or about 490 and 2,300 feet. They've got these weird lobed fins and a tail unlike anything you'd normally see on a fish, which is why scientists think they're kind of like this bridge, a missing link between fish and the first land animals. That's how long these things have been around. Since that first discovery, another species, known as the Indonesian coelacanth, was spotted off Indonesia in 1997. The vaquita is a tiny porpoise living in the northern part of Mexico's Gulf of California. It's basically the rarest marine mammal on Earth. As of 2025, there are fewer than 10 left. They're small, only about 5 feet long. They have dark rings around their eyes. They stick to shallow, murky waters, so that makes spotting them harder. The biggest danger for these things isn't natural predators, it's us. Fishermen set nets to catch another endangered fish called the totaba, and vaquitas get accidentally trapped in them. These other fish they're trying to catch are highly prized, especially its swim bladders, so these nets keep being used even though they're deadly for these porpoises. Conservation teams are patrolling their habitats quite often. They remove nets, they use underwater microphones to try and track them, but just aren't enough resources to fully protect them. So that's a fun note to end on. This first creature on the list is the Protolophila. Not exactly a household name, but that's probably because this thing was believed to have gone extinct not 100 years ago, not a couple thousand even. Scientists thought it went extinct about 4 million years ago. This tiny sea creature related to corals and sea anemones usually only shows up as little holes on the tubes of marine worms. Until recently, it was only known from fossils found in Europe and the Middle East, but when scientists in New Zealand dug up fossils of this thing that were supposedly from a time after the species had already disappeared, it got them curious enough to go back and check some tube worm samples they'd collected back in 2008, and it turns out Protolophila had been alive and well in New Zealand waters the whole time. They just hadn't noticed. As National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research scientist Dennis Gordon put it, it's one of those rare cases where studying fossils actually led to finding a species still alive today. Amura's whale is a ghost of the ocean, so rare that until 2015 scientists had never seen one alive. They were first confirmed as a separate species in 2003, based on DNA and physical differences from Bride's whales. But even then, they were known only from dead specimens. That all changed in October of 2015 though, when an international team of biologists filmed Amura's whales off the coast of Madagascar. They spotted 44 individuals and collected some samples, making it the first time this whale had ever been documented alive in the wild. Amura's whales are pretty small by whale standards, only about 32 to 39 feet long or 10 to 12 meters, and people often mistake them for Bride's whales. One of the coolest things about them is their asymmetrical lower jaw. White on the right side, dark on the left. Their fins are unique as well. which make them easier to tell apart if you're lucky enough to see one. Since that first footage, Amura's whales have popped up a handful of times, but sightings are still rare, and scientists still have a lot to learn about them. For almost 50 years, nobody had seen the Pastrum cyathiform, a rare stalked jellyfish that was last spotted in France back in 1976. Most experts figured it had gone extinct. But then Neil Roberts, just a tourist on an island off the coast of Scotland, flipped over a rock and found 4 of them. Roberts took some photos, but when he looked online, he noticed what he'd just photographed didn't really match any other photos. The only thing that looked close were old drawings. Turns out Neil had just taken the first ever photo of the species. Guy Freeman, editor of British Wildlife magazine, was amazed. When Neil first shared the photos, it was like seeing a ghost, Freeman said. Continuing, this thing had only ever existed in old drawings. It was suddenly there, in the flesh. This next creature is called Tuatara. Just look at this silly, stubby-legged little lizard. Cute as can be, according to me. I know some people are freaked out by reptiles and lizards, but I really enjoy them. So these things can be found roaming around in New Zealand. They look like a lot of reptiles you've probably seen, very similar to iguanas, but these things have quite the history. They've been around for an estimated 225 million years. So once again, they're basically living dinosaurs, just very small ones. Pretty cool. What's also interesting about these things is that they don't have ear holes like modern day reptiles, so their hearing is, of course, limited, but they can still respond to low frequencies. Next up, we have the Chinese giant salamander, and when I say giant, I do mean giant. These are the largest amphibians in the world. Some of them can reach up to 6 feet in length, weighing in at about 110 pounds. That sounds like a salamander that would have been roaming the earth during the time of the dinosaurs, and they did. The Chinese giant salamander has been around since the Jurassic period, about 170 million years ago. These creatures are also known for their very unique and haunting sounds. They've been described as rather unsettling. Some people describe them as barks or hissing, but the creepiest noise is the high-pitched crying, almost like a very young human. Given how huge these things are and the fact that they clearly do not look human, that would be pretty freaky hearing a sound like that come out of an animal like this. But honestly, I still think these creatures are kind of cute in their own weird way. And we have another dinosaur, the Komodo dragon. These things are insane. They're huge, some of the biggest lizards on the planet, weighing more than a full-grown human in some cases, and these things are as dangerous as they look. They've been known to attack and even kill humans, and to top it off, their bite is venomous. Scientists have found Komodo dragon fossils that are about 4 million years old. These giant lizards are found in Indonesia today, specifically 5 islands, one of which is called Komodo Island, which, no surprise, has the largest population of Komodo dragons in the country. You can't just wander onto this island, not that you'd ever want to. It's very strictly a guided tour situation. If you ever visit, trust me, don't want to go alone. If you stray too far, it could be the last mistake you make. Komodo dragons are no joke. Along with crocodiles and alligators, they're one of the closest things we've got to real-life dinosaurs. These reptiles can reach lengths of 10 feet with razor-sharp teeth and venomous saliva. They eat whatever they can catch: monkeys, deer, boars, goats, and, yeah, sometimes humans. They're just pure predators. Now, they don't attack humans all the time, but between 1974 and 2012, there were 24 reported attacks in Komodo National Park. The shoebill stork. These birds have been around for 30 million years at the least. If you were to look at every living bird today and you had to just pick one that looked like it had been around since the prehistoric times, it would have to be the shoebill stork, right? This is definitely the one I'd be picking. Look at the size of the beak on these things, very dinosaur-esque. Shoebills are found in the swamps and wetlands of Africa. They're massive birds, standing about 4 to 5 feet tall with a wingspan of 7 to 8 feet. They have this unmistakable shoe-shaped bill, which can reach lengths of up to 9.5 inches just on its own. This massive bill is a formidable weapon for catching prey, which is mostly fish. They're known to be very patient hunters, standing motionless for hours before striking at lightning speed. And these birds really are just as intimidating as they look. Highly skilled hunters that are capable of preying on animals as large as young crocodiles. And to top it off, they make this eerie clicking sound with their beak. They sound almost like an automatic firearm or the predator. What you are looking at here is a horseshoe crab. Now, crabs may not be all that exciting to you, but these ones are different. Horseshoe crabs are one of the oldest creatures on the planet. They've been a staple of the Earth for around 445 million years. That is a lot of years. That's back before the land split off to form the continents that we have now. Earth still consisted of one single supercontinent when these things were around. These ancient arthropods have seen old friends go and new ones come along, and when I say friends, I mean entire species evolve and then go extinct. They've seen a lot. And interestingly, even though they have crab in their name, they're not actually crabs. They're more closely related to arachnids. This video supposedly shows a woolly mammoth crossing a river in Siberia. It quickly went viral, racking up 3 million views on YouTube and more. People couldn't help but wonder if the mammoth had been living for centuries in remote parts of Siberia, completely untouched by humans. Now, whether you think this video is a hoax or not, there have been some interesting reports of supposed living mammoths. They're believed to have gone extinct over 10,000 years ago, but there are still stories floating around about them being spotted in some of the world's most remote places, especially in the northern hemisphere's tundra. Native American tribes have been telling tales about these creatures for years. The Northeast Algonquins talked about a great moose with a weird extra limb growing between its shoulders that it used to prepare its bed. The Naskapi people from northeastern Labrador spoke of a monster with a long nose that it would use to hit people. Even Siberian tribesmen have reported seeing large, shaggy beasts roaming around, though no one's actually caught solid proof. There have been mammoth sightings across Asia, South America, North America, and Russia. What you're looking at here is a massive sized sturgeon. The footage originally posted by Ronald Drago was shared and reposted all over the internet, and it's easy to see why. The creature is just a monster. The sturgeon is an ancient creature that's been around since the early Jurassic period. Some of these fish can grow over 20 feet long, which is as big as a great white shark. They mostly feed on small animals from the ocean floor and are harmless to humans, but because of their size, they can still pose a threat. There have been reports of sturgeons leaping out of the water, landing on boats, and causing serious injuries or even death. They can weigh over 1,000 pounds. This footage here was posted to YouTube by Adam Pitts, who'd hauled in this Jurassic era sized beast in Florida. A bunch of hunters had been trying to snag this thing because it was responsible for some deaths. No surprise there. This gator was not missing out on any meals. Pitts and his team had a long battle with the gator before finally hauling it out of the lake. It was about 12'8". It's sad, but unfortunately some animal populations just need to be controlled sometimes, especially when it comes to people's safety. This wasn't just a hunt for the thrill of it, it was for the protection of the community. This is not an AI video. This is a real piece of footage taken back in 2018 at a golf course in South Carolina. This gator was caught strolling through the golf course on its way to somewhere. It's become a pretty famous video. The event was taken by multiple people from different angles. Video of it showed up on the news, and it's understandable. It looks like footage of a living dinosaur. Even the family of deer in the background just couldn't help stand there in total shock. Like, what are we looking at right now? They're standing there like a deer in headlights. Alright, I guess deer aren't really all that hard to surprise. But still, gators are some of the oldest animals on the planet. I still find it so cool that you really are looking at a living dinosaur when you see one. This footage here was captured by members of a Japanese expedition crew in the Congo. They were seeking out evidence of an elusive animal known to the locals as Mokele Membe, a plesiosaur-like creature believed by some cryptozoologists to be a remnant of the Cretaceous period. Mokele Membe comes from Bantu mythology. It's said to live in the Congo River Basin. It's described in different ways. Some say it's a reptilian creature, others think of it as a spirit, but the most popular description is an ancient dinosaur-like sauropod. In the early 1900s, cryptozoologists got really interested in this legend, with some launching expeditions to find proof for the creature's existence. Most experts believe that the stories about Wakalimembe are probably based on sightings of the black rhinoceros, which used to roam the region. Some even think the myth may have been influenced from earlier tales about Great Zimbabwe.
This animal looks like a tiny deer that forgot to finish loading in. Rabbit-sized, shy, and it has little fangs because nature loves being dramatic. The silver-backed chevrotain, also called the Vietnamese mouse deer, went unconfirmed for decades, with the last record often cited around 1990. People feared it might be gone. Then researchers set camera traps in coastal forests of southern Vietnam, and the cameras caught it. The first photographs of the species in the wild with scientific evidence published in Nature, Ecology, and Evolution. This is one of those rediscoveries that feels like it should be easy. How does a hoofed mammal vanish? But in places with intense hunting pressure and dense habitat, it can happen fast, which is why the paper and follow-up reporting basically scream the same message. Great, it's alive, now protect it. This one has a special kind of weight because it was not just missing. It was officially treated as extinct. The hula-painted frog is from the Hula Marshes. After habitat destruction, it was believed gone, and it became famous as the first amphibian declared extinct by the IUCN. Then, in 2011, a frog was found again in the area, kicking off the rediscovery story. And in 2013, researchers published work describing the rediscovered frog as a living fossil and confirming it was a survivor of the lineage we thought had collapsed. The idea that a creature can sit in a tiny pocket of habitat, hanging on for decades while the world declares it gone, is both hopeful and terrifying. Hopeful because life persists, terrifying because it means we can be wrong and we can also be too late. This is the one that feels like a creature from an alternate timeline. A tiny mammal with a long, flexible nose, related to a group that includes elephants, but it fits in your hands. The Somali sangi, also called the Somali elephant shrew, has been lost to science for about 50 years. A team set more than 1,000 live traps across multiple locations, and they did not just find it. They documented it properly with photos and video. The first known visual documentation of living individuals for science in a very long time. And the best detail is how they found it. They combined local interviews with fieldwork and analysis, like detectives trying to match a rumor to physical reality. Then, reality blinked first. A tree kangaroo, known from basically one historic specimen, vanished for about 90 years. Then, someone finally photographed it in a remote mountain forest. Tree kangaroos already feel unreal. Kangaroos are supposed to be on the ground, hopping. But tree kangaroos climb, live in forests, and move in ways that feel like the world got patched with an extra feature. This tree kangaroo was known from a specimen collected in 1928, and for a long time it was treated as possibly extinct, or at least incredibly uncertain. Then, in 2018, it was photographed in the remote mountains of New Guinea. The story is one of those perfect examples of how rediscoveries often happen. Someone goes into difficult terrain that most people do not bother with. They are there for one reason, sometimes plants, sometimes birds, sometimes geology, and then they spot something that is not supposed to be there. The photos were reported widely by major outlets, and they turned the tree kangaroo from a museum mystery into a living animal again. This is the kind of rediscovery that creates a new question immediately. If it survived for 90 years with almost no documentation, what does its population actually look like? Is it hanging on by a thread, or is it quietly stable in a place humans rarely enter? That is why follow-up work matters so much. A photo proves existence, it does not prove safety. If you told me a species thought extinct could be rediscovered near a major city, I would have raised an eyebrow. The Victorian grassland earless dragon had not been seen in Victoria for more than half a century, and it was widely treated as gone from that region. Then, in 2023, it was rediscovered west of Melbourne, announced publicly with photos. Zoos Victoria describes the rediscovery as a turning point, because once you confirm a population still exists, you can restart surveys, habitat assessments, and protection efforts with real urgency. And here is the detail that makes this feel like a movie. Detection dogs have been used to help locate individuals in the grasslands because the lizards are small, camouflaged, and spend time in burrows. The idea that the species can be there, but essentially invisible unless you have trained noses on your team, is wild. It is a reminder that extinction is not always a dramatic ending. Sometimes it just is us losing track and then finally learning how to look properly. Picture this, a creature that looks like a hedgehog and an anteater got merged into one stubborn little tank. It lays eggs, it has spikes, it has a long snout, and for decades it was almost a ghost. Attenborough's long-beaked echidna was known to science from a single specimen collected in 1961 in the Cyclops Mountains of what is now Indonesia. After that, nothing. No confirmed photos, no confirmed video, just silence. Then, teams started doing something that sounds simple, but is actually the difference between myth and proof. They listened to indigenous and local knowledge about where it might still survive. Then, they put camera traps in exactly those places, and the cameras delivered. The animal was filmed by camera traps in the Cyclops Mountains. It is one of those moments where the world feels bigger again. Like, if this can still be alive in rugged mountains, what else is out there avoiding us? This one is a perfect horror movie concept if you're afraid of what might be under your feet. De Winton's golden mole had not been seen since 1936. People assumed it was gone, especially because its habitat along South Africa's west coast had been hammered by mining and development. But golden moles are built for disappearing. They do not leave obvious tunnels. They swim through sand. You can stand right above one and never know it is there. So researchers fought stealth with technology. They used environmental DNA, meaning they sampled soil and looked for genetic traces, basically a forensic sweep of the dunes. They also used a trained detection dog to help locate signs in the right areas. And in late 2023, it happened. Evidence confirmed the species was still there, with the rediscovery announced publicly and backed by fieldwork and lab confirmation. That is the part that gets me. This animal was not missing in some deep jungle. It was missing in sand near human activity, hiding in plain sight for nearly 90 years. If you wanted to design a creature that screams ancient world, you make a giant tortoise on a volcanic island. The Fernandina giant tortoise was known from a single male collected in 1906. After that, the species was widely considered lost forever. Fernandina Island is an active volcano, not exactly a cozy retirement home. Then, in 2019, a single female tortoise was found alive on the island during an expedition. There were also signs like tracks and droppings that hinted she might not be alone. Later genetic work confirmed what people desperately hoped. She belonged to the long-lost species. That confirmation was tied to a scientific paper in communications biology, and it turned legend into living. They even gave her a name, Fernanda, which feels fitting because this entire thing reads like a character returning in the final act after everyone assumed they were dead. This is one of the coolest rediscoveries because it is not just a photo, it's the kind of footage that you replay 5 times like, hold on, is that actually it? The black-naped pheasant pigeon was lost to science since 1882. That is not, we missed it for a bit, that is generational. In 2022, a team searching Ferguson Island in Papua New Guinea used local ecological knowledge and camera traps. And near the end of the expedition, they got it. A clear camera trap image of the bird walking right past the lens. Reports also describe photo and video capture as part of the rediscovery story. There's even a quote from a researcher saying they thought the odds were less than 1%. Then the bird strolls by like it owns the place. These animals are not waiting for us. They are surviving. Our cameras finally just landed in the right spot. This is the world's largest bee, and it looks like something you would expect to hear in a nightmare, not in a biology paper. Wallace's giant bee was last officially recorded alive in 1981, and for decades people feared it might be gone. Then in January 2019, a team found a living female in Indonesia associated with termite nests, and it was photographed and filmed alive again. The photographer, Clay Bolt, captured captured some of the first modern images that proved it was real, right there, alive. What makes this story extra intense is that the location has been kept quiet at times to protect the species from collectors and habitat pressure. Because yes, even a giant bee can be poached. So the footage is not just a wow moment, it is also a reminder that rediscovery can put a target on a species if people are not careful.
We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the coelacanth. You're not gonna believe this, but these fish were around when dinosaurs roamed the earth. In fact, they were believed to have gone extinct alongside the dinosaurs. Then, millions of years later, they were rediscovered. In the 19th century, scientists discovered a fossil of this fish. This fossil was over 410 million years old. They thought they went extinct around 66 million years ago. So it shocked scientists quite a bit when in 1938 they rediscovered them off the coast of South Africa. They're just alive and thriving. In our 4th spot, we have the singing dog. This animal has been named the singing dog due to their distinctive howl. Sometimes they howl together to form kind of like a choir. Apparently their howls sound like a cross between a wolf's howl and a whale's song. They are also called the New Guinea Highland dogs and are closely related to the Australian dingo. Now, wildlife biologists thought that these animals went extinct sometime in the 1970s. However, in 2016, they were rediscovered in a remote region of New Guinea. Tests were run on them and it was confirmed that they were the same breed. In our 3rd spot, we have the tree lobster, which is not an animal, so I'm technically cheating having it on today's list because it's an insect, but who cares, okay? The tree lobster is a large black stick insect. In fact, it is said to be one of the rarest insects on Earth. Back in the day, they were popular for fishing, as they were used for fishing bait. But by the 1920s, they were said to be extinct. Basically, a ship accidentally crashed onto an island and rats aboard the ship got introduced onto the island and threatened these species. But later on, a pair of Australian scientists discovered 24 of these bugs living beneath a single shrub. They ended up taking 2 pairs, breeding them, and then reintroducing more of these insects to help repopulate them. In our 2nd spot today, we have the night parrot. Night parrots are often referred to as one of the world's most mysterious birds. They were first discovered in 1845 and were extremely rare to spot. That's because they come out at night and only in remote areas. Even then, there had not been a single sighting of these birds for 100 years, so they were declared extinct. That was until 1979 when a number of them were spotted again. In fact, this bird is the holy grail for bird watchers. Some spend decades hoping to get a glimpse of this bird up close. And in our number 1 spot today, we had the Kashmir musk deer. But I like to call them the vampire deer because they have vampire fangs. So these deer are native to Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, and western Nepal. It was believed that they went extinct in 1948 until they were rediscovered in 2009. However, they are badly endangered. It's said that there are less than 5,000 musk deer throughout the world. The main reason being is because they are a very popular target for hunters. Hunters like to kill them for their musk glands, which are often used in perfumes. They are said to be a rare aphrodisiac and can sell for around $45,000 per kilogram. Now, it is illegal to hunt for them, but that still doesn't stop people. Starting off this countdown, we have the extinct bat. In 2019, the Hills horseshoe bat species were spotted for the first time in 40 years. The bats are home to a Rwandan rainforest. Scientists figured that they were endangered and had gone extinct already, since they hadn't seen them in years. That was until 2019 when scientists were on a 10-day expedition, and they came across these little guys. But when they first captured the bat, they didn't know how great their discovery was going to be. One scientist said, and I quote, "We knew immediately that the bat we had captured was unusual and remarkable. The facial features were exaggerated to the point of being comical. It took them 3 years to then identify what species this bat belonged to. Once they did, that's when they realized that this bat was brought back to life." In our 9th spot, we have Catagonus wagneri. Back in the day, this animal was discovered from early fossil records. They were thought to be extinct and people only knew about them because of the fossils. That was until 1974. That's when a biology professor from University of Connecticut rediscovered them while on a research expedition. In fact, the species was well known to the native people there. However, they are badly endangered. A huge population of them live in a 2,400-acre area in Gran Chaco. They hide out in the bushy, thorny areas so that they're safe from predators and local hunters. Sadly, only approximately 3,000 remain in the world. Moving on to number 8, we have tarsier. Now these guys are undeniably cute. Just look at its eyes, like they're so cute and big for its tiny little body. But strangely enough, scientists still don't know much about them. One of the reasons being is that scientists thought that they went extinct in the 1920s. But in May of the early 2000s, while checking a rat trap that they had set in the forest, scientists discovered that they had actually caught a pygmy tarsier. Sadly, it had died in the trap. But that's what let them know they were still alive, minus that one. Then in 2008, researchers found a family of them in Lore Lindu National Park. Nowadays, it's believed that there are only 5,000 to 10,000 of these animals in the whole world. And that number is sadly falling again instead of rising. Now this is because these little creatures don't live too long in captivity. In fact, when they are in distress, they apparently try to take their own lives. So that's a reason why it's hard to look after these little guys and keep them off the endangered list. In our 7th spot today, we have the goblin shark. Now, if you all have been a fan of this channel for a while, then you guys know that I hate this guy. Like, I'm not scared of sharks, but this guy, like, he's terrifying. He doesn't even look like a shark. He looks like a mutated shark. Like a shark that scientists tried to cross with a human or something. Anyways, goblin sharks were believed to have gone extinct millions of years ago. That was until 1891, when researchers spotted it off the coast of Japan. Instantly, they were confused, but also scared, because again, look at this thing. What they found the weirdest though is that this shark barely changed over time. They didn't evolve at all. They still look the exact same, hence why they are called a living fossil. So these creatures can grow 12 feet long and can weigh up to 460 pounds. But in 2000, they found a giant goblin shark that was 20 feet long. So now researchers say that they have no real idea about how big they can truly get. Now the scariest part about them is that they have these weird ligaments in their jaw, and that allows them to extend their mouths out and snatch up their prey. Plus, their mouths launch out pretty fast. That's also why it makes their mouth look so creepy, you know? In our 6th spot, we have the tequila fish. And it's a very interesting name for a fish. I hope their relatives are called the vodka fish. So these fish disappeared from the Mexican wild in 2003. This was due to pollution and invasive species. People thought there was no hope, that these fish were just gonna die off. But turns out that conservationists were able to bring them back to life after a decades-long operation. Basically, scientists at Michoacán University in Mexico took 5 pairs of these fish in 1998. They then kept the fish safe, studied them, and then they made them reproduce to develop a larger colony. After 4 years in artificial ponds, scientists were able to increase these 5 fish to 10,000. However, only 1,500 were released back into the wild. And apparently, the released fish are thriving and reproducing out in the wild.
In November of 2021, researchers at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute were out with their ROV called Doc Ricketts when they came across a giant phantom jelly. Very, very rare sight. It showed up almost a kilometer underwater in Monterey Bay. Its bell alone is over 3 feet wide, and then it trails 4 long arms that can stretch more than 30 feet. It's massive. Now, MBARI has done thousands of dives. They've only ever spotted this jelly a small handful of times. In fact, since the species was first collected back in 1899, there have maybe been 100 confirmed encounters worldwide. It seems to live all over the planet, in every ocean except the Arctic, but because it lives so deep down, it basically stays hidden from us. Before we had high-tech cameras, scientists tried to study creatures like this using trawl nets. That worked for fish and squid, but with jellies, it was basically useless. They just turn into mush. Now with ROVs shooting high definition, even 4K video, we're finally seeing the phantom jelly the way it actually looks in its natural habitat. Back in 2000, Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute's ROV Tiburon was out exploring the deep off Monterey Bay when researchers saw something they couldn't really place. Nobody knew what to call it, so they just nicknamed it the mystery mollusk. Over the next 20 years, MBARI kept spotting it more than 150 times, and finally, after a lot of work in the lab, they confirmed it's actually a brand new kind of sea slug called this. And this thing lives in the midnight zone, thousands of feet down. Unlike most sea slugs that crawl on the seafloor, this one kind of swims in open water. To eat, it uses that giant hood-like thing on its head, almost like a Venus flytrap, snapping it shut on its tiny prey. It's also bioluminescent. Researchers even saw it detach one glowing finger-type thing from its tail as a decoy to confuse predators. When we first filmed it glowing with the ROV, everyone in the control room let out a loud "ooh" at the same time, said scientist Stephen Haddock. DNA tests also showed that it's so different from other sea slugs, it's enough to get its own separate group in the sea slug family tree. As MBARI's Bruce Robinson put it, our discovery is a new piece of the puzzle that can help better understand the largest habitat on Earth. The ruby sea dragon wasn't officially identified until 2015, which is crazy, because that made it the first new sea dragon discovered in 150 years. Washed up specimen had actually been found back in 2007, about 9 inches long, but nobody realized it was a whole new species until later. Unlike the leafy or common sea dragons that have those long decorative frills, the ruby sea dragon looks a little plainer, with short, stumpy lobes. The name comes from its color, obviously bright red. Scientists think that's not just for show. In deeper water, red light, it disappears fast, which actually makes red animals harder to see, so it works kind of like camouflage. That explains why these guys managed to stay hidden for so long, plus they live deeper than most divers can safely go, which meant no one had ever filmed one alive until 2016. That year, researchers used a remote underwater camera off the coast of Western Australia and finally caught one on video, and the footage was published in 2017. One of the weirdest parts of this animal is its tail. Unlike other sea dragons, the ruby sea dragon has a prehensile tail. Basically, it can grab onto things like a chameleon does. Last year, a team of international scientists just blew the lid off one of the most unexplored areas of the ocean. During a Schmidt Ocean Institute expedition to the Salas Wygomas Ridge, a remote range of underwater mountains stretching from Chile to Rapa Nui, they discovered 160 species that hadn't been recorded in the region before, and they think at least 50 of those might be completely new to science. This campaign found between 50 and 60 potentially new species at first sight, a number that is likely to increase, as we have many samples to work on in the laboratory, said one of the lead researchers from the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. The team documented everything from deep-sea corals and sponges to squids, crabs, and fish. The 40-day expedition included 25 scientists from 5 countries, plus the first Rapa Nui marine biologist, Amelia Ra'apalmatuki. Plesiosaur is one of those creatures everyone's been, of course told is long gone, but stories about it keep popping up. For over 100 years, people have claimed to see long-necked flippered animals in lakes and oceans all over the world. Loch Ness in Scotland, Lake Champlain in Vermont, even off the coast of Japan, and we're not talking about tourists who just want a good story, not always anyway. Some seasoned sailors and fishermen will also swear they saw something out there. Probably the wildest case was in 1977 when a Japanese fishing boat pulled up this decaying carcass near New Zealand. The thing had a long neck, flippers, and looked eerily like a plesiosaur. Scientists just said it was a decomposing basking shark. Others weren't so sure. The resemblance was just a little too on the nose. This is a megamouth shark that was spotted off Indonesia. This species is very rarely seen. People didn't even know it existed until 1976. They can grow up to 18 feet long and feed by filtering plankton through their huge mouths. Megamouths live so deep that almost all footage of them comes from deep-sea submersibles, or accidentally they get caught in fishing nets. The megamouth shark was discovered totally by accident in 1976. Unlike most sharks that chase and bite, the megamouth just cruises along with its mouth open, scooping up tiny plankton and jellyfish, almost like a whale. It's such a strange way to feed for a shark, and again, no one had ever seen one until a random encounter with a US Navy ship's anchor line, and since then, only a handful have ever been spotted. About 6 years ago, Ocean X managed something that had never been done before. They tagged this blunt-nosed six-gill shark straight from a submersible, no bringing it to the surface first. Now, these sharks are living fossils. They've been around long before most dinosaurs existed, and they barely ever show up on camera. So this footage you're looking at here is almost like catching a glimpse of what the deep waters of Earth looked like hundreds of millions of years ago. The news of this just came out a few months back. Scientists finally filmed a colossal squid in its own habitat for the very first time. Not a washed up carcass or something snagged by accident, but a living juvenile cruising through the Southern Ocean near the Sandwich Islands, about 2,000 feet down. Kat Ballstead, a squid researcher at Auckland University of Technology, confirmed the footage and said, "This is the first confirmed footage of the colossal squid at home in the deep sea. This is honestly one of the most exciting observations we've had," end quote. Now, the squid they caught on camera was only about a foot long, but adults can reach up to 23 feet and weigh over 1,100 pounds, making them the biggest invertebrate on Earth. Their eyes alone are massive, about the size of a soccer ball. Squid expert Aaron Evans actually said he started hyperventilating when he saw the footage come through. For good reason, too. Most of what we know about colossal squid comes from dead ones, pulled up by fishing nets or from pieces found inside sperm whale stomachs. Kat Ballstead explained why they've been so elusive, saying they know we're there long before we know they're there. They are actively avoiding us. This is a photograph of a coelacanth taken in Indonesia for the first time. This is the Indonesian coelacanth, a species scientists believed had gone extinct for 70 million years. Marine biologist Alexis Chapuis spotted it while diving in the Malacca archipelago about 475 feet below the surface. Back in 1938, a coelacanth was pulled up in a fishing net off South Africa, and it was described as one of the biggest natural history discoveries of the 20th century. Since then, sightings have been rare. In 2013, Laurent Balesta managed to photograph wild coelacanths at Sodwana Bay, South Africa, but that was the other known species. The Indonesian coelacanth is different. Researchers are keeping the exact dive location secret for now because the fish are so sensitive to changes in their environment. They don't want people flocking to the area to try and spot one themselves, let alone trying to haul them out of the water. In 2015, researchers studying underwater volcanoes near the Solomon Islands ended up filming something they weren't even looking for: a massive shark that wasn't supposed to be there. Brandon Phillips, a PhD student at the University of Rhode Island, had been dropping baited cameras called drop cams into the deep sea to check out life near an active volcano called Cavachi. One of those cameras went down over 3,000 feet and came back with a bit of a surprise. When the team downloaded nearly 8 hours of footage, they spotted what looked like a giant brown blob in one of the thumbnails. Phillips said, "Both of us looked at each other and said, we gotta look at that thumbnail right now." When they opened the file, they started yelling. They just filmed a sleeper shark, something nobody expected to see that far south. "We were freaking out," Phillips said. Experts later said the shark was probably a Pacific sleeper shark. And if that's the case, it means this was the farthest south anyone had ever seen a Pacific sleeper shark. Sleeper sharks are rarely filmed alive at all. They usually live deep, can grow over 20 feet long, and decompose quickly when brought up, so they're pretty hard to study. Next up, we have the Blyde Rondevel flat gecko. For over 34 years, this little finger-sized gecko was only known from 2 specimens collected back in 1991, and many doubted it was even a real species. Then in May of 2025, researchers Aaron Peterson and John Davies from the Endangered Wildlife Trust were helicoptered into the remote canyon in South Africa's Blyde River region, the same area where the original specimens were found. Well, in just a few days, they found about 20 to 30 of them, photographed 7 and collected tissue samples to prove it is a valid species. Darren Peterson said, "In terms of how we felt after hours of searching for the gecko and not finding it, we started to doubt whether the gecko still existed. When we found the first individual well after midnight, we were ecstatic." He added that this rediscovery will allow the species to be officially reassessed and protected. Next on the list is the black-napped pheasant pigeon. This chicken-sized pigeon was last seen by scientists in 1882, and for more than 140 years, the only physical evidence of it was in dusty museum drawers, until September of 2022, when a conservation team used camera traps on Ferguson Island in Papua New Guinea to capture photos and video. Jordan Boersma, one of the lead researchers, said they had, quote, less than a 1% chance of catching it on camera, and then he described scrolling through the shots as the most surreal moment of his life. Co-leader John Mittermeier added, "Seeing those photos of the pheasant's pigeon felt like finding a unicorn." They spent a month trekking through rough terrain and setting up 20 camera traps. It was actually local hunters who pointed them in the right direction. Without their help, this bird probably would have stayed, quote-unquote, extinct. Now that it's been found again, the big focus is making sure its home doesn't get wiped out by logging. Just back in May, a diver off Indonesia snapped the first ever photos of a live Indonesian coelacanth in its natural habitat. This is a huge deal, because while coelacanths were once thought to have gone extinct 70 million years ago, only 2 species are known to still exist today. There was one caught on camera back in 2013. That was a West Indian Ocean coelacanth found near South Africa. This new sighting is a totally different species, first time it's ever been photographed alive in Indonesia. The fish was spotted in the Maluku archipelago, about 475 feet deep. Marine biologist Alexis Chapuis from Unseen Expeditions was the one who saw it. And diving that deep is not easy. He had to use mixed gas diving, which comes with serious risks like decompression sickness if you mess up the timing. You can also die if you mess up the timing. Blank Pain, the watch company that helped fund the dive, called coelacanths often mistakenly called a living fossil or dinosaur fish, and pointed out they've been around for over 400 million years, long before dinosaurs. The Kashmir musk deer is one of those animals people thought was long gone. No confirmed sightings since 1948. Most experts assumed it had gone extinct. But then in 2009, a research team working in the forests of northeast Afghanistan, they spotted one. There were multiple sightings, including images of live ones on camera traps. Suddenly, an animal believed to be wiped off the map was back. These deer are super elusive. They're small, shaggy, they don't have antlers. Instead, the males have these long, fang-like teeth that look like vampire tusks. It's pretty wild. They also produce musk, which is highly valuable and unfortunately has made them a target for poaching for hundreds of years. That's part of why people thought they were gone. As one of the team members told reporters at the time, this is the first time we've been able to confirm the species is still out there since the 1940s. Now the challenge is making sure that they stay out there. The pygmy tarsier is this tiny, big-eyed primate that looks like a cross between a Furby and a gremlin. It's nocturnal, lives in trees, and hadn't been seen alive since the 1920s. So for decades, people figured it had gone extinct. But then in 2008, a team hiking in Indonesia's Lor Lindu National Park suddenly came across one. Not only did they see it, they actually managed to trap it. The team includes Dr. Sharon Gursky-Doyen from Texas A&M University, who said it was like finding a living fossil. They were hiking up steep mountains, setting traps high in the forest canopy, and boom, there it was. Tarsiers are incredibly hard to spot. They're tiny, quiet, they live way up in the trees, only moving around at night. But what makes the pygmy tarsier different is its size. It's even smaller than the others and only found in a very specific misty patch of forest in Sulawesi. The Cuban solenodon is an animal that seemed to vanish off the face of the earth until someone randomly spotted it and proved everyone wrong. This weird little creature is native to Cuba and looks kind of like a rat with a long, twitchy snout. And would you ever guess that it has venomous saliva? Because it does. It's one of the only mammals on Earth that can inject venom. People thought it had gone extinct way back in the 1970s. Nobody had seen one since 1890, and for a while was basically written off. That changed in 1974 though, when not one but 3 solenodons were caught alive. But even after that, sightings stayed extremely rare. It wasn't until 2003 that another one popped up, and this one got a name: Alejandrito. Scientists studied him for a couple days, found he was perfectly healthy, and then released him back into the wild. The problem is that the Cuban solenodon is ridiculously hard to find. It burrows underground, only comes out at night, and lives in dense mountain forests. And because it only has 1 litter per year, it doesn't bounce back easily. The terror skink sounds like something out of a 50s monster movie, but it actually sorta lives up to the name. The lizard was first described way back in 1876, and then it just disappeared. For over 130 years, scientists assumed it had gone extinct. No one had seen one alive. But that changed in 2003 when researchers in New Caledonia came across a live one. The terror skink is nearly 2 feet long, has curved fang-like teeth that are actually strong enough to tear through crab shells. It's an apex predator that hunts birds, crabs, also other reptiles. When it was finally photographed alive, scientists were stunned, not just that it was alive, but that it had gone unnoticed for such a long time despite being such a fierce hunter. Since then, it's only been seen a handful of other times.